You are listening to another Clarkesworld podcast. I'm your host and narrator, Kate Baker. Greetings, Clarkesworld citizens. Welcome to the fourth story for the month of December, issue 231. It's our fourth story of the month as we sail to the end of the year. And these stories, along with all of our future stories for 2026, are brought to you by your support. So if you've gone to patreon.com/Clarkesworld, clarkscitizen.com, purchased a subscription, or chucked a few bucks our way via donation, you allow us to keep doing this for you each and every month. So thank you. The piece is titled The Hole and is by Ferenc Samsa. Ferenc Samsa writes speculative fiction from Canada, surrounded by birds. So, my dear listener, I hope that you can sit back, relax, and let me tell you a story. You see, we are making a bargain. You give me a dream, I give you joy. Henri Barbusse. It was an excellent performance, but over too fast. They're slotted for 20 minutes, but it was done in 17. As the staff began the preliminary task of disposing of the pieces, the stains would require harsh chemicals after we, the audience, had vacated the premises. I was tempted to discuss it with the other patrons. Why had she become so excited? Had the golem miscalculated? I held temptation at bay. The other patrons had faces of simple delight, though the aura of the house's rows of lights can exaggerate any expression. I myself was not disappointed in the performance's imperfection, merely curious, and did not want to dampen the nights of others by bringing it up. I pushed against the brass door and entered the Golden Night. There was a crowd of sniveling protesters, but I spat my chewing cocktail at their feet, and they parted for me. I set out for home. I realized if I hurried, I could avoid some of the crowds coming from the other 20-minute performances. I would surely still become caught up in them before my flat, but if I were particularly lucky, I could reach home in time to avoid the flood of audiences from the 30-minute performances in this district. Relatively alone on the sidewalk, I pondered it. There are many performances that incorporate randomness, with an audience member called upon by the tickling of a feather or by the discovery of a golden egg under their seat. The performance at the House of Dilation is the same every night. It's supposed to be. The 20-minute crowds began to pour out onto the streets, and I had to weave through them. I occasionally had to step off onto the portion of the street shared with trolleys and cars, and thus had to step carefully. At several points, these vehicles stopped beside me in traffic, and I could gaze upon their sleeping or impassioned or intoxicated passengers, often leaning against the glass, gently delivered home by invisible drivers. The House of Mirror was at the start of my street. To avoid the glassy masks of its patrons, I cast my eyes up at the golems patrolling the glowing night sky with their rifles. I could not make out their faces, but knew them to choose a cruel and malicious look while working, even though at the castle up close, they were the sort of beings one would have enjoyed sipping tea with, had they the mouths to do so. There was a flash of light to my left in the door of the House of Mirror, and it caught my eye for a second. With it, I looked upon the inverted triangle mask on one of its patrons and saw my own shameful face reflected for a moment. I scowled, elbowed my way through the remainder of the patrons, and admitted to myself that the shortened performance at the House of Dilation had disturbed me. My earliest memories were of whining workers scared of the golems improving all the time, but the present was separated from these memories by an uninterrupted enjoyment of the perfection they achieved. Why such a simple error now, in such a corner of the city? I reached the apartment having avoided the throngs of 30-minute goers, and this was a blessing. Nico meowed from the other room, but I bade it to rest until I was clean. I partook of the little rituals of return that pleased all men. I set my own bath before I had taken my shoes off, so that by the time I came to the water with my tea, shorn of public clothing, it was at a height and temperature pleasing to me. When I returned to my study, clean, with the happy, bitter aftertaste on my mouth, half a mind to fall asleep early and half a mind to watch the throngs from my balcony. I heard a human sound. I turned. I leaned down. In the hole in the wall was an eye, peering through at me. It was time. "Hello," I said. "Don't go." I pulled out my study chair, rearranged some things, and sat level with the green eye. The wall was thick enough that they'd have had only a small sample of my room while they waited. Its golden instruments with little glamour, though often a little glamour is greater than much glamour. My robed torso as I moved through the room. Now they saw only my own eye pressed against the hole. Her eye was rouged, not unlike the performer tonight. I suddenly realized how like an eye the city is. The black pupil was the castle at the center. The iris crypts and rings and bands were all the streets and houses of the city core covered in foliage. The sclera was the endless solar panels covering the coffin districts. My neighbor's rouge could even symbolize the far-off oceans. "I didn't know there would be a hole," she said. "Oh, how was the apartment advertised to you?" I asked. "As pleasing, with one secret delight." I shifted in my seat to allow more light in, to see her eye better. I could have the building manager install micro lights inside the wall, but for the time, I prefer that the only light be that which we allow in. As I write this, in an enormous room thick with swampy darkness, I understand that the new owners have expanded the hole to admit even a large hand, and there is no worry about lack of light. "Are you a prisoner?" she asked. "No," I said. "Why do you ask?" "I wondered if this might be a performance, where I am party to watch a jailed man." I laughed. The whole is my doing. She paused. I could tell she was trying not to blink. I did not tell her it would not bother me. "Are you a voyeur?" "If it pleases you, you can cover the hole when it is not in use. My desire is for a secret converser. Perhaps every night, perhaps not." Now she blinked. "You could go use a computer. Everybody's secret." There would be no truth in it. Now I know some truth of you, even though we do not know each other's identities. I could repitch my voice as a man's. Wear contacts. You could now, but I would remember your true voice and your true eye. Are you opposed to my arrangement? I can have the building manager find you a new apartment. My own golem could find me a new apartment easily. I have the money. Well, which is why you were willing to pay for a secret delight. The building manager advertised it for women only. You see why I think you're a voyeur. Her eye narrowed. Were you just at a 20-minute performance? A 30, just down the street. I suppose those are less disgusting. Are you a performer? I see a rouge. I work at the castle. Caught unprepared, I paused. I wonder what played on my eye then. I work at the castle as well. I thought her eye would open wide, but it didn't. I thought so. These are very nice apartments. Her head shifted away. She put up a finger to the hole, and I understood she was pausing me. Her finger was rouged too, with lacquer red on the nail and the streaks of pink around it. Then her eye returned. Well, you can hear everything in my room, then. I have no privacy. This isn't the kind of secret I expected at all. And I said you could cover the hole. Pile it with books if you wish. I'm going to do that now. Her eye departed. I remained. A minute later, the thick spine of a book appeared and covered the hole. I could only make out the beginning of a word. Mar. Then I heard more books piled on top. This was to be expected. I set up my bed in the study, for I have beds in all my rooms, and set to sleeping. The sound from the windows was quiet. I reached for the button and reduced the noise suppression. Now there was a pleasant chatter from the streets below, punctuated by the occasional bell from the trolleys. At some point, I heard the books move away from the hole, saw light creep through it, and knew I was watched. This was to be expected. My mind exhausted itself listening to the snatches of conversation below. It was Friday night in early spring, in the 30th year of the city. I fell asleep easily. On Saturday evening, I intended to partake of the district's evening performances in order to relieve myself from the stress and dread of the week. Instead, on my way out of the building, I was caught by one of my downstairs neighbors, who had been chatting to the doorman. A pretense. When signing the lease, a new resident is always told it is preferable to communicate with the doorman from one's apartment. She had a sharp face. She seemed mixed, but I didn't care to guess at what combination of races. Purple-black hair fell in wet waves to her shoulders. When she detached herself from the doorman, he looked down at me from where his second set of eyes brushed against the ceiling, and he offered a nod that seemed to mean, "Thank you for relieving me. Good luck." "Have we spoken before?" she asked. She slipped her arm through mine. Her eyes were gray like my own. We set out walking around the block. The sky was pink and fading. "I don't think so, though I recognize you from the building." "No, I think we spoke at some party here. Maybe a year ago? At your welcome party." "Well, then we would have spoken very little." I held out my free hand. "Apartment 12. Pleased to meet you." "Huh!" She took it with her free hand. It was warm and soft as though she had just been soaking in cream. "Then, I'm apartment 3. Pleased to meet you. I've heard through our neighbors that you enjoy the more particular performances of this district." Waiting for a reply, she spun her head toward me and saw my frown of admission. "Oh, I ask because I would be interested in converting apartments 1 and 2 into a house of performance. Income would be shared throughout the building. You would make a handsome profit." For now, I resisted asking her what performance she had in mind. "Have you talked to apartments 1 and 2? I had no idea why she thought it possible. She would need to convince a supermajority of our apartments, and it was exceedingly doubtful that so many of us would desire to have our lives upturned by patrons going in and out of our entranceway every night. We had paid great sums for some measure of privacy. "Not yet. I want an alley in the building first. You're the perfect fit, an aficionado of the houses and a long-term resident here." We turned a corner onto a slowly turning street, convex around the castle. A choir marched down the middle of the street, tossing flower petals as they sang. Though it would have been written only hours prior, it sounded like old Bulgarian. It was beautiful, and in its newness, it was twice beautiful. "Is your hope for profit?" I asked. I pulled a petal out from where it had ensconced itself atop her elfin ear. "I can think of better ways to make money." "Well, my hope is to perform." I raised my eyebrows. Again, she waited for a reaction she did not receive and turned her head to see my expression. Pleased, she went on. "Patrons would order me to do physically strenuous things until I'm exhausted. We would remove the wall between the apartments, and they might order me, for example, to run around or jump until I fall. The point would be to cause me to faint, and then a golem would carry me in its arms to my room. The pleasure for the audience would be in inducing depletion in another human." I thought about it. Her aside on removing the wall disquieted and distracted me. "You wouldn't live very long. Perhaps not even a year." "Well, then you'd find a new girl and continue on." I shrugged. It's not how I'd enjoy my time." "Then get a manager for it and let yourself profit from afar. Please, it does not matter to me. I merely want to perform." I said nothing. We turned a corner again and now aimed at the castle. Its darkness only heightened the chroma colors of the buildings on the street. My interlocutor sought an expression on me again, but did not find it this time. I have other ideas, she said, in a higher-pitched voice. These I'm not as attached to, but they would still make me happy. A golem would infect me with a disease, from the old times, altered to accelerate its process. Patrons would watch my rapid decay, perhaps on a white divan. The golem would cure me every night. This would proceed more quickly. The necessary insurance would prevent any profit, I interrupted. I saw our building in the distance, at the vertex of the thin sector we had walked, and I realized in frustration that I was now too late and too far to catch the beginning of any performance. We would go bankrupt at the first disruption. If you want to die so badly, you can find a private audience anywhere. She withdrew her arm from mine, her face scrunched horribly unhappy. But then there's no message. For a moment, I wondered if she wasn't a humanist. Normally, that wouldn't bother me. Yesterday's activist is tomorrow's counselor, the saying goes, but my work was making me sensitive to the possibility. What message? I asked, sharper than I intended. That though mankind fades in relative glory, we still ascend in absolute glory. That there is no woe in this. Not a humanist at all. We reached our building's entrance. We turned to face each other. That's a nice message. I have heard of houses similar to the ones you propose. I would be happy to send you a list of addresses. You might find what you seek. She shook her head. Her hair had begun to dry and rise into ringlets. I work for the castle, and I inspect all the houses for regulation compliance. Did you know this walk we just took is around the perimeter of the old Thermidor's district? I know all the districts and houses. It's harder to become a performer than you think. She sighed effortfully. Ours would have been a great house. She leaned forward and kissed me. Passers-by applauded, but I barely noticed. Her choice of words terrified me. Did you know? The old Thermidor. Her tongue pushed at mine, then flicked up at my teeth. I opened my eyes. Hers stared into mine, pleading. I obliged her. When we pulled apart, there was a small redness mixing into the pink of her lips. She nodded and went into the building, ignored the doorman, and went upstairs. I stood outside only for a moment. I could not shake her reference to the Thermidor. What did she know? I made myself recall all the local performances within walking distance. I could still attend one. If I found a 2-hour affair, I would have only missed a small portion. But lately, the style of these, the concerts and films and history lessons, was to draw out a story all seasons for the audience, to bond them more tightly. To enter mid-season and mid-show would be to stain something sacred to them. Couples walked past me on the sidewalk, which shimmered with their passing. Many were dressed in the attic in barbaric styles of last year's season, as though in response to my inner debate. More people were paired with male golems than with female golems. All looked very happy. Most couples saluted me and spoke in the ancient style. Good evening, my good man. Would you care to join us? Fellow citizen, is not the city beautiful? I went inside. The doorman saluted me with his huge and metallic left hand. I saluted back with my tremorous and stained right. I went upstairs. Nico, my little golem, slept in its bed, whiskers poking out. The apartment was pristine. Nico must have watched my passage around the city and heard my agitation, for the bath was already drawn for me, happily hot. I thought to soak for a long while, but in becoming perfectly alone with my thoughts, found myself ruminating on the two women, gray and green eyes. I resisted the urge to ascribe meaning to these colors. It was a Saturday night, and it would be smart for me to spend the night out late, darkened by draft and drug, for better relief before my work the next day. I got out, resolved to ask the doorman for a recommendation for both venue and substance. As I moved through the study, a deep voice came through the hall. "Come here, little man. Put your mouth on the hole." I sat beside the hole. I smiled. I placed my eye against it. On the other end was a vibrant purple eye. "I know it's you. If you had a guest, the building's manager would inform me." She cursed in the deep voice and pulled away from the hole. There was a brief sound of awkward struggle with machines. She knelt back down, her eyes still purple, her voice soprano again. "They didn't tell me all this when I signed the lease. I've arranged for there to be no penalty for breaking your lease." "Are you a humanist? Is that it?" I was about to answer yes when she continued. "I supposed you couldn't be, if you go out to those performances. Wait a moment." She shifted. It seemed that I had been seeing her right eye, and now I looked at her left. "That's better. Well, will you tell me of yourself, dear neighbor?" "You know I work at the castle. I work in defense." "Doing what?" "Well, it depends on the problem of the day. If the golem's time is best spent on thing A, we humans can be useful on thing B." "You're not very specific, you know. What do you want from me? Friendship? Friends must be vulnerable with each other." "What clearance level do you have?" "You can't ask friends that." I paused. By law, there were no micro cameras in private dwellings, and I did a sweep every month and found none. But that didn't mean they weren't there. Still, when I took ownership of the apartment, I told myself I had to be okay with the risk of this. And if she really did work at the castle, it was a minor offense to divulge my work. "I'm helping to catch the Thermidor." "I've heard that name. Who is that?" I swallowed. This was more exciting than a 20-minute performance. Was this how a performer felt? "It's a rogue golem. It escaped a year ago and now hides somewhere in the ocean. My department is deathly afraid of it getting more compute and going exponential, though that's certainly hard at sea. The problem is that it pays citizens to assassinate its hunters." "How do they do it?" "You don't want to ask me about how it got out. What would happen if it stole some of our compute? Most of all, I wanted to tell her how the department scanned and saved copies of our brains every week in case of our deaths." "I want to know how citizens assassinate people in your department." I frowned. "Well, it doesn't train them, if that's what you mean. It merely sets up betting markets on the deaths. It bets ludicrous sums on the survival of its enemies. Thus anyone can bet on their deaths at ridiculous odds. One can innocently claim that they merely took a side of a bet. The deaths are opportunistic. It doesn't always work." "Oh, genius. Is there a betting market on you?" "The Thermidor doesn't know of my existence." "I want to hear the methods." "Pushing in the way of a car, stabbings, accidents at houses. Nothing fancy if that's what you want." "I'm afraid it is." She closed her eye on the other side, perhaps intending to symbolize a dissatisfied frown. She opened it again. I noticed she was looking around at the edge of my own eye, like circling a ring. "So you hunt the ocean floor?" "Our golems do," I could admit freely. It was the obvious thing to do. "It shouldn't be long before we destroy it. I do something different." "What?" "That, I'm afraid I can't even tell my friend." I grinned on my side. "Now, will you tell me what you do? How you can afford that apartment?" "No, not yet. I want you to come over and touch me." I did not move. "We can be blindfolded if you like. We can keep your game going." "I do not wish to change the nature of our game in any way." "Oh, it can't last forever," she said. "I will recognize you someday and everything will change, whether on the stairs or in the entranceway. We may already have." "I wear a mask in public," I said. "You would not recognize me." "Oh, then wear a mask and come over. Yesterday you said you saw my true eye and heard my true voice," she said slowly. She was pronouncing each word with more difficulty. One could intercept the sounds coming from her side as that of her struggling with something. But I haven't seen anything true about you yet, and I won't until I feel you. Everything about you is a lie. I stood. I considered walking out. There was still time for my earlier plan. Instead, I slid my left hand's middle finger through the hole, my other fingers and knuckles pressed flat against the wall. My nail and little more would poke out onto the other side. There was a plane of wood on my side on which I rested my head, on which I might keep a mug of tea. I felt now that the plane had been removed on the other side. "Touch this," I said. I heard her muffled voice through the hole still. "Pardon?" I said. "I said that you must keep your hand still. This will hurt, but it is the only way for me to trust you, which I can tell you want so badly." I abided, but I was afraid. There have been thieves in the city who have elected for their punishment to be the removal of a digit. This seemed the worst possibility now, and was not so bad a one for me, who has no musical talent and only a rare need to hold a weapon. I waited in silence. Then I felt a feeling somewhere between pain and discomfort on the pulp of my fingertip. In it. Inside it. "Don't move," she said. I held. If she was injecting me with something, there was nothing to be done, even though my body screamed at me to evade death. My clone could be operational within a few years. Nico would make my death pleasant once it noticed I began dying, and it would alert the castle. Nothing of the sort happened. The buzzing stopped. "Take your finger out of the hole," she said. I did. I slowly turned it and marveled. She had tattooed a little blue dot on me. "Now, I can check the hands of my neighbors until I find you. Gray eyes, gloved hands. This will betray you." "Artful," I said. "Oh, that's a horrible word. You know, I do enjoy this game of yours. You better keep it up. I was thinking of retiring to the coffin district soon, but this tells me there are still joys to be had outside of the coffins." I said nothing. "I'm going to watch Glamours on my phone for the rest of the evening," she said. "You are free to watch me do so." So I did. I leaned against the wall and could see her mouth. It was unlike the mouth of apartment 3. The lipstick was red instead of pink, thinner. Her mouth quickened and slackened as she watched whatever slop the golems were generating on her phone. At some point, I became concerned. It wasn't just my department that wasn't allowed phones. No castle employee was allowed one. How did she have one? But if I had made myself vulnerable to her by revealing my mission, perhaps this was her trade in response. We were bound to each other by these minor infractions. A few hours in, she announced she had to relieve herself. She stood before I was ready, and I saw the rest of her body in a translucent robe as she went to another room. There were Nazar tattoos on every vertebra of hers. 33 blue eyes staring at me. She was a humanist. I could not reveal I had accidentally betrayed our arrangement. I could not let it influence how we interacted. I could not reveal I wanted to kiss all the way down her spine. When she returned, I commented on the pleasant shape of her mouth. For the remainder of the evening, she turned off her room's lights, turned to face the hole directly, and I saw down her tongue and throat, illuminated lilac white by the phone's blue light. When she finally closed her mouth, she fell asleep before me. I retreated to my bed and stared at the ceiling, unable. Eventually, Nico woke, sat on my chest, and purred. This helped, and I descended into dreams of a leviathan bursting from the red ocean, waters running off like blood. On Sunday evening, I donned court dress in the style that was popular just before the city and I were born. The costume was popular this season, giving my gloves some deniability. The tattoo pulsed at my finger more than was reasonable, the soreness disproportionate to the ink. The effect of the glove was that, without being able to see what it hid, I could imagine the worst. I could not shake a lingering anxiety that my finger would burst, mixing blue ink and red blood, staining the glove and revealing myself, and worse, sealing my hand inside through a gluey paste of blood and ink and sweat. I went out to distract myself with what I had considered the night before. I attended a 2-hour performance. This was open to audiences of all ages, and I stood out as a single man from the cluster of families who all knew each other. They were of no interest to me. I wanted to watch a film. The film was one of the odd ones from long ago, though it was altered to be more pleasing to the present audience, the presenter explained. Color had been added, and though there was an ancient translation from the original Swedish, for this presentation, Golems had studied the original actors' voices and generated English to fit them. The seats had personal blinders that could be turned on to display explanations of the current scene beside one's head. I was tempted to use them, but it was never something I did when I went to the films. The one trick I had, that I did at all films, was to spend some portion of it watching the projector operator. They are rarely golems. It is a sort of role that humans enjoy playing at, and I enjoyed watching their work. In many films, there is no visual artistry, but a human at work is always beautiful to behold. This is why the 20-minute performances are thrice beautiful, once for labor, once for the poised body, and once for ugliness. All men since Judas know that ugliness enhances beauty by the power of contrast. In the film, a knight traveled lands ravaged by plagues. I had to study plagues in my work, or else I would have needed the blinder explainers. Before there were millions of golems per every human, humanity was riddled with diseases and had frequent die-offs. The thought of it distracted me from the film. Diseases hid in wild and farmed animals and spread to humans that way. Once there were no more such animals, it was easy to eliminate disease. Now that they had been replaced by golems, could there be something like a virus that spread through golems? I wondered for a moment. Surely this was something the misalignment team studied under the castle. Like all human thoughts in the city, it must have been thought before and better by machines. The film was disturbing in its depiction of abject poverty, as the presenter had warned. The knight on the edge of starvation took pleasure in a meal of milk and strawberries, the strawberries found by chance in a field. There was no grocery machine to serve up meals of tender unpork and Chinese anise soups. There was no bed to relieve his weary, sun-torn face. There were no pleasure companions at all, only villains who tried to rape the women of the film. It was hard to watch. It helped to imagine it as a simulation of somebody who consensually chose the world for its capacity for suffering. That only one man really experienced this horrible world, the simulator who played at the knight and achieved virtue by the film's end. I must have shown my disquiet on my face as I exited the theater surrounded by families, for the presenter stopped me. "Did you enjoy it?" he asked. He wore an old-style theater manager suit, but he had a painfully garish tattoo of a projector on his face. The reel surrounded his eyes, and the mouth of the projector wrapped around toward his left ear. I suspect I entered the wrong theater. I thought it was to be a film of entertainment, not education. He looked at me curiously. "Many are entertained by the protagonist's journey to virtue. I'm sure this is a failure of mine, not of your film." I forced myself to smile at him. Perhaps my own journey to virtue will entail resilience to vice. He bowed his head politely, and I walked on. Outside the theater, waiting, I saw my neighbor. Apartment 3. Her dark curls were gone, replaced by a long and straight ponytail, named for the sorts of creatures the knight and his squire rode. I now guessed she was South Asian, but I was horrible at guessing these things. This was one of the conversational tricks women used at parties. "Go on, then. What's my admixture?" And my inability to satisfy them in this game was emblematic of the larger failings of my youth. "You changed your hair," I said simply. She shrugged. "It was time. Have you tried the new chemo solution for it? I shaved this morning, applied it, and by the time I left home, it was like this." There was the briefest pause, then she said, "Do you need some?" And she stood up, pulled my head down, and eyed my crown. "No, and I'd tell you the truth." "How did you know I was here?" I asked. She offered her arm. I took it as I had the evening before. She walked us back to our district, but turned us to go through a park. The trees in this one were golden, a trick to preserve the best of autumn all year. They matched the night's glow perfectly and might have seemed metal, but for the sound of the wind moving through their leaves. I lied only a little yesterday, she said. I don't inspect the performance houses. I looked at her curiously, and then I think my dread showed on my face. I'm on the Thermidor case, the same as you. I suspect not quite the same as me. There's been another attack today. A crazed knifeman got one of my team. We got the bastard in turn, but monies have already been dispersed to his wife and children who fled the city. She eyed me. We suspect the Thermidor is using a human agent within the city to coordinate a greater attack. I rehearsed the next few things I should say. Her arm was tighter around mine today. I know, I finally said. Well, then you should know that some of my team suspect you, that I was given my apartment in order to monitor you. I shifted my arm slightly as her arm tremored against me. Then I realized she was transmitting a message. Our comms are compromised. I had nothing to say to that. You should have your team talk to my team, I said. No, don't be so stiff. We just received an anonymous tip that you have humanist sympathies, that you're a subversive. Well, the castle loves its subversives, I said, happy to quote the manual. During peacetime, not wartime, we reached the iron gate at the other end of the park. Little rabbit golems bowed to us, then got out of the way. We returned to the streets of the city. A humanist would be an odd ally to a rogue golem, I said. Hatred makes odd allies. She walked onto the vehicle's portion of the street. Approaching cars instantly braked. It was an impressive display of her rank. No small regulator here, her badge's radio signal would override nearby cars. Why? Tell me, I asked, catching up to her. She smirked. As your minder, I wanted to watch your own response. Well, I hope it was adequate. Reminded suddenly of having bitten her only yesterday, I made myself smile vampirically. Otherwise, our future business venture would be imperiled. We reached our apartments. She looked sad. You mustn't joke. When everything is over, I do want to become a performer. My offer still stands. I would be a great companion to you. In my apartment, I took time to prepare. I watered various plants that Nico had left for me. I took time to think. Then I entered my study and sat at the hole. Books still covered it. I saw different letters now. RGU. I'm just wrapping some things up. How was your day, dear? The woman asked, her voice distant. There was a sound of furniture moving. I laughed. Fine, darling. This new game pleased me. You know, if you're to continue this with me, perhaps we should have names. I heard her pause in her movement for a moment. Don't hint. Be forthright. You have them picked already. I was thinking Orpheus and Eurydice for... No. You shall be Pyrrhus, of whom we all know that he was the first to praise the Muses, and I shall be Methone, your consort. It wasn't to my liking. I could not think the name Methone without thinking of the egg-shaped moon of Saturn, but it would do. Did you work today, Methone? I try not to work on weekends, but there have been lots of emergencies lately. I forget if I told you my memory is only human. I work on the coffin district. What human work is there? I suspect it's like your own work. We fill in when the golems can't. I do two things. I interview citizens to make sure they're happy in the coffins. Don't workers in the coffin districts use a formal name? The hospices. She froze. I had caught her in something she hadn't expected to be caught in. Well, I said, trying to relieve her panic. Are the citizens happy? To interview them, we have to wake them up from their visions. I've never woken anybody without them fighting to return. You still interview them? Have to. Part of the Constitution. Ask if they think their life has meaning. Ask if they would like to spend some time outside. ask if there was any experience the hospices aren't providing. And, well, they say whatever will let them return to the coffins as quickly as possible, she said bitterly. The pretense of hospices was gone. You know, I'm not sure it's as total as that. I know people who have left. Really? I left. She became quiet. She came to the hole and pushed away the books. She looked into my eye, her own true green again. How? It was about a decade ago, and I wasn't in there for very long. I needed something they couldn't provide. Sometimes I think that's why I like the things I like. It's what remains. The coffin satisfied everything else so well. Was there a tear in her eye? You must know, the coffins are much better now. A decade ago they were cheap but weak. Now they're highly customized to each resident. And they get better all the time. I'm sure they do. I put my mother in one for a few years ago to give her some peace at the end. I smiled and wondered if she could see it change my eye. But I think even when they're perfected, even then, people will leave. Well, there are people who leave the entire city. They live in the forest to the north. I know. I've had to investigate them in the past. Harmless folk. A lot of odd beliefs. That the city's joy relies on a hidden and tortured child. That performers are slaves, not consenting adults. Oh, we have an odd city. I've met them as they leave. They have to walk through the coffin districts. She paused. Do you know that 49 out of every 50 citizens sleep in a coffin? Counting children? Well, no, children aren't allowed. I mean adults. I didn't know. 49 out of 50 in perfect bliss. We sat awkwardly. I wondered if I shouldn't have made the hole thinner. A small and absurd part of me wanted to touch my eyelashes to hers. You said there's a second thing you do with your coffins. Oh, I check for subversion. The visions require a significant amount of compute. If a rogue golem were to take control, they'd be powerful beyond belief. Her eyes flickered downward. I have a treat for you tonight. Like a dog treat, I joked. What's a dog? A loyal animal. Okay, then, yes. I have a dog treat for you. She sounded confused and off-kilter. You insist you won't come over. I said nothing. I could even put my mouth here and wait for you. I could lie at home all day, wait to hear your door, then get in position. Not that, either. What's the treat? I've hired a surrogate to visit you. If I can't feel you, I must watch you. My hope is that this will ease you into coming to me. I considered the security on the 3rd floor. I'll be plain with you. It's against my oath for me to sleep with anybody while we hunt the Thermidor. We, his hunters, risk being drawn into its snares. She did not reply. Her silence, contrasting her prior chattiness, sounded horribly sad. I lowered my voice to a whisper. Mathone. Pyrus? I'll do it for you, I said. Just let me get a drink first. Yes. She'll come up now. Mathone sounded excited. Tonight she was much more sincere than the night prior. She's waiting outside in the rain. Was that a joke? I went to my kitchen and prepared whiskey. I leaned down and pet Nico in the pattern that made it happy. No reason to be nervous. Hadn't I done this before on some other mission? Hadn't I played surrogate myself? But these things were as likely to end in tears of sorrow as tears of joy. I drank and poured more, profound aftertaste. I turned my head to little Nico, which watched the door. Tell the whiskey brewer, excellent flavor. Nico meowed. A knock came. I opened the door to a skeletally thin woman. It was the kind of wasting that happened when people became ensnared by too many glamours. She should have already retired to the coffin district. Heavy makeup was applied to her face to make her look healthy. She let herself in and gently pushed me backward. She pulled off her chroma jacket and hung it up. Her naked body was hard to look away from, more from disquiet than from fascination. "Hello, lover. Be not afraid of my body." She gestured at it with more grace than her body would seem to allow. "My contracting agent desires to see as little of me and as much of you as possible. This is not an abnormal procedure, and we can make it pleasing for everybody involved if you—" "I don't need it to be pleasing to me," I said. "Tell me what you'd like and we'll get it over with." Her mask quivered for a moment, then she nodded. She pulled an earpiece out of her coat's pocket. It was a strange shape and stranger material, and as she hung it on her ear from different angles, it looked like a star, a comet, or a black hole. She took my hand, explained to me how she would like it, and I pulled her into the study. It proceeded. I could hear the quiet bass murmur of my neighbor's voice through the wall, then echoed a fraction of a second later as treble in the earpiece, which the surrogate could not help but hold with her hand when messages came. It was as though the volume were painful and she could not change it. After these directions, she would have us adjust positions in view of the whole. After one such message, she pushed herself up on her elbows against me and whispered in my ear, "My contracting agent has a pill for you to take. It will enrage you. You may damage me, but this would be pleasing to me." I pulled off the bed and spoke into the hole in the wall. "I'm not going to take a pill. She can." I turned back to the surrogate. She was holding the earpiece. She nodded. She looked up at me. "This is agreeable. You will have to restrain me." Then she reached into her own mouth with her thumb and forefinger, unscrewing motion. Out came a fake head of a tooth. She took my hand and placed the tooth head in it, like I was her lab assistant in an entertainment glamour. Then she reached in again and pulled out a tiny yellow pill. She traded it for the fake head, which she reattached. "Couldn't carry it in a coat pocket?" I said. She didn't catch my mirth. She took the pill from me. "It isn't sexy to carry pills in pockets." She popped it back in the mouth it had hidden in all night. She swallowed. She looked into my eyes. "It will come on fast. I would like you to insult me as you restrain me, but if this is disagreeable to you, it is not a requirement." It did come on fast, and I finished fast. Nico ran into the room when it heard the noise and retreated in a show of embarrassment. Oddly distracted, my mind floated, wondered whether the engineers had ever settled whether golems feel or not. It had been treated as the most important question of our time, but I didn't remember if it had ever been answered. Then things became unpleasant. The pill had not finished its effects upon her, and I had to work harder and harder to restrain her while all my feelings retracted. I felt idly now, like I could insult her in my impatience, but didn't have the heart for it. She flung her wrists against my hands. I felt one snap. She continued to flail against my pin, so the effects subsided. She quivered. I released her. "Do you need a doctor?" I asked. The wrist hung limp at a novel angle. She shook her head. "I'm not human. I can direct my emotions as needed, and I found this exceedingly blissful." I eyed her. There was no sign that she was a golem, but it wasn't illegal to grow a human body around the machine core, which would be inside her matted and bloody skull. She cleared her throat and asked if she could leave a review. I was tempted to tell her to leave one with the Secretary of Defense. I told her to address it to my golem. Then I was alone with my neighbor again. I could hear water pouring in her room as though she had left a tap on. I knelt by the hole naked and in darkness. "Hello, Mathani." I put my eye against the hole. "Pyrus?" Her eye appeared. There was some sort of blueness smeared across the sclera, but it was hard to see in the darkness. "Did you enjoy it?" "Very much. I learned a lot about you." Her tone made me think of waterfalls for some reason. She was breathing heavily. "All Good things? Well, now I know you are humanist. I never saw anything as good as a man restraining a machine. Oh, I have to catch my breath. Will you stay here? Of course. Didn't she know the surrogate could switch into a stronger body, come back and bash me into a pulp without a second thought? Can I tell you something? She asked. I have a disgusting fantasy. Tell me. She explained it in detail, fluids, objects, kisses, while I wanted to go clean myself. When she finished, my mind groped for a response. Well, perhaps there will become a day when I do anything for my consort. You really are a worker at the castle, aren't you? She said. I thought you lied at first, that you were actually a proprietor of a house, but you have all these rules, no penetration, no pills, that mean you're a soldier. I broke one for you, I'll break more, but even you shouldn't work with those pills, they can kill you. And you really are a humanist. There was a time I wanted to die, and I thought to share the pills with a lover, to die tearing each other apart, but lately, I have hope. The silence became loud, more than cleaning. I wanted to reach over and release the noise suppressor, let the night sounds cover us. I had to proceed. Why do you have hope, Mathoni? Because I have a purpose. Don't ask me, not now. I took my own kind of pill. You could ask me anything and I would betray myself. You must not abuse it and I'll know you love me. That would explain the stain in her eye, which began to blink and tear. I need to tell you a secret, Pyrus. Tell me. There's a woman here who wants you dead. I've seen her skulking outside your door, so I followed her. I didn't want to alarm you. Tell me. I followed her. I listened at her door. The Thermidor is going to attack you. I heard it outside apartment 3. Tell me what you heard. My voice sounded icy to me. I was betrayed. That it will come from the sky. I watched the tear push out from her eyelid and make its way to the bottom of the hole. There's a way, Pyrus. You can stay with me until the danger passes. It might take years. Well, then we could go somewhere far, far away. It's just like the ancient said. Omnia vincit amor. I did not go to her on Monday evening. I spent it out, wandering the streets, golden streets, silver streets, bronze streets, watched by the golems flapping idly far above, observed by my team and its micro cameras, directed by a pitch-shift voice in my ear. I made my way through endless waves of dancers, wondering why everybody was dressed so formally, until I saw a bride and groom waltzing in the middle of the street. I quickly turned back, not wanting to endanger them. My heart pounded, and I could not think intelligently. My body was covered with sensors, and the voice joked with me that I'd have a heart attack before the Thermidor could attack me. There was something in me that did not want to die. At midnight, I tapped the transmitter in my pocket. Getting late. Try again tomorrow. 2 more hours, came the voice in my ear. Get coffee if you need it. The transmission did not close while the speaker paused. I'm being told that the best in the district is 1 block up. I did not reply. I walked 1 block up. There was an intersection before the cafe, one of the few where cars had right of way over pedestrians. I waited. I looked up. One of the golems flew lower than the others. For a second, I found it odd. They only did that back before their aim was perfect. Then it leveled its rifle at me, and it was too late to think anything. Suddenly, my eyes burned. I fell back into the crowd of people. I could hear people above me scream, and I could feel them fall on top of me. I covered my head. My eyes were screaming. It felt like the skull behind them was melting. It had gotten my right eye for longer, and must have grazed my left eye as I fell. The weight piling on top of me terrified me. There were people running around me, screaming. Cars honked without release. Then there was an explosive rifle crack. 2 seconds later, the giant thump of a golem falling out of the sky. "Clear!" Sirens rang out behind a voice on a microphone. "Clear it up!" My brothers and arms were coming. I felt the weight atop me slowly lessen. Then arms pulled me up. Masamune, are you alive?" Somebody yelled. I couldn't recognize the voice. Obviously, I'm alive. "Can you see?" "No." The man swore he helped me walk slowly as though there were still a regular sea of bodies around us, not a police cordon. I felt vulnerable in a way I could not have imagined. This man hadn't introduced himself. He could be another agent of the Thermidors to finish me off. The van he helped me into could be taking me away from the city to be tortured. I suddenly felt afraid of things I had never felt afraid of. Without knowledge of what was in front of me, I had the sensation I used to have when falling asleep, that the bed was tipping forward and I was about to fall into nothingness. I reached out to steady myself against the universe. A hand gently took mine and placed it back in my lap. "Bad business of it, Masa. I should have expected a hack like that." I couldn't place the voice and it scared me. Then I could, apartment 3. "How many gargoyles did it get?" I asked. I wasn't dead yet and I wasn't being tortured, which meant... "We don't know yet. The castle has disabled all of them for review. 5 humans dead, though. You're safe now. It's time for the next part." She reached forward and touched my hand. "Can you see it all?" I began to reply, then she said, "Does anybody here have any eye drops?" I hadn't even known there were others with us. "They have eye drops, Masa. Open your eyes." She paused. "You're not opening them." "I'm trying." I felt her hand pull against my face. I felt the drops hit my left eye, though from far away. When she opened my right eye, I heard some sound from her, but without being able to see, I could not understand its meaning. "That one's gone. I don't want you to worry. We'll grow you new eyes. Now blink a little." I did. Brilliantly, mercifully, something returned. Yellow. The world was all yellow. I blinked more, hoping for more effect. Blues and greens swirled at the bottom of my left eye. I blinked more. And that was it. No red, a tiny zone for blue and green, and a wall of yellow. The world was indistinct. I could barely make out shapes and motion. There was no woman sitting out in front of me. There were waves and mountains and valleys of yellow. Ridiculously, I could make out that she had blue pants on. "Nothing, really," I thought out loud. "Maybe more will come as I get used to it." There was movement. I imagined that she shook her head. "No sign of the human agent, though. Maybe we'll get something once we crack the gargoyles." "Oh, what a failure." "No," I said. "The fact that it isn't you. I know who it is." "What are you talking about?" "I know who the agent is. I can get us enough for an arrest. Take me back to the apartment." "You're barely functional." "It's better this way. Let's go." A man walked me through the entranceway up the elevator and to my door. Along the way, he said the eye drops were his and asked if they helped. I told him they had. I wanted to rehearse the next part in my head to calm my pounding heart, but he was telling me that the protesters had disabled his son years ago, and the castle had restored him. That's when he went to work for the castle out of gratitude. Now that he had helped heal me, he felt he had repaid the castle in a small way. I felt like my other senses were already growing stronger without my sight, because his voice sounded very loud in my ear. We stopped. "This is your door, sir," he said. I didn't move. Awkwardly, he took my hand and placed it on the knob. It didn't open. I swore. "Oh, it scans my eye, which is gone." I hammered the door. "Hello? Nico?" "Baka Nico, it's your master. Can you let me in?" "That's your golem?" asked my aide. "Yeah. I have a little ferret one," he said. "I know mine would let me in. I bet yours will too." "You know," I said, "I think I can take it from here." Pyrus? Mathoni. I heard her voice to my left. What happened? Oh my God! Thank you for your help, friend. You can go. I'm in good hands now. The man squeezed my arm and patted my back. I heard the elevator behind me, and Mathoni's hand was in mine. You went outside. You were attacked, she said. I heard her open a door. We must have entered her apartment. It isn't as bad as it looks. I'll get new eyes. I wouldn't trust them, she said. I wouldn't trust eyes from the castle. I'm from the castle, I said weakly. Oh, don't talk. Do you want some water? A towel? Anything? Anything, I said. She moved through the room. I felt around me. I was on a couch. There were papers to my right useless to my eyes. On the table in front of me were objects I did not understand, though they seemed to be instruments of pleasure. Then I felt a gun amongst them. My heart began to beat so loudly I thought she could hear it. My mind worked inefficiently in my state, loopy. I removed its clip and hid it in my pocket and tried to place it back as I had felt it. Then she returned. She put a warm, damp towel in my hands. I'm going to clean you, she said. Then she took back the towel and began applying it to my face. She tisked. There's a line right across your eyes, the top of your nose. Even your hair on the side is burned. You should have stayed with me. If only you'd stayed with me. My team thought it would be a light gun and I could take the hit if I fell fast enough. Gods, they really aren't human. But you did survive, it's true. Now it won't attack you again. It will think you're too well defended. She paused. You're lucky I heard what I did in the building. Mathoni? Yes? Why didn't you surrender the Thermidor to me yesterday? I felt her freeze. I tilted my head and my eye back to try to see her in more color, but without red it wasn't worth it. I don't know what you mean. You're his agent. No. Why would your prey move into the apartment next to you? Well, because we've circulated rumors through this district where the Thermidor still has eyes, that the mastermind of its hunters lives in this building, has prurient taste, and allows himself to become ensnared by the women in the apartment beside him. And your master heard these rumors and sent you to see. This was a moment where she might reach for the gun out of panic. She might even physically struggle with me and win in my blindness. Armed men were crowded in the stairwell and my brain had been scanned on the ride over, but I did not want to die. Desperately, blind, exhausted, I wanted to live. Then she did something I greatly admired. She continued to clean me. She pulled the towel away. There was a sound of soaking it in water, squeezing, and then she returned it to my face. It isn't so simple, she said. Tell me. I know you tried to compromise me with sex and pills. It's not like that. It's me trying to see you, not the Thermidor. You have to listen, and you've been trying to entrap me, too. You should know I can recommend anything from your execution to your removal to a safe house. She eyed me. She could say the word and I would do it. Instead, she went on explaining. The Thermidor wanted you converted so I could infiltrate the castle, but I thought you might be a humanist like me, that you might want to run away with me. I had to see if you were loyal to the castle or to humanity. It's the same thing. You don't believe that, she hissed. The air we breathed felt perilous. She had admitted enough for the team to execute her without my command. Through the wall, there was doubtless an X-ray scope trained on her head. I met the ones who walk away. I wasn't strong enough, not until the Thermidor showed me the way. If the Thermidor gets its way, there won't be any humans left. It just wants to be left alone. It's going to use the compute I have in the Coffin District and take down the castle. It can have the ocean, and it'll leave humans alone to have the land. She took my hand in hers now and leaned forward. She spoke as though into my own mouth. All the yellow of the world darkened into gold. Won't you escape with me to the forest? Before or after the castle replaces my eyes? You wouldn't be able to see anything real with them, anything true. Why did you let the Thermidor try to kill me? Oh, you have no idea how powerful it is. You were doomed the moment you revealed yourself to me, so I told you how to survive it. All you had to do was stay with me, and now it's easy. I love you, Pyrrhus. Something snapped. I raised my hand and gave the signal through the wall. She didn't understand, and then she did. Her door flew open, and golems marched into the room. Freeze! Something yelled. I felt her continue to move to reach for her mouth. I groped madly and fought her. I pulled out her hand, a fake tooth head. Don't let her swallow, I yelled hoarsely. There was a sound of struggle. I had been told that there was a successful fight to induce her to vomit. Apartment 3 came in and officially arrested her. She screamed my name, and she was dragged away. Apartment 3 gave the order to the golems to clear out, then we were alone. A hole between apartments. I could hear her voice from across the room. That's how you got her? Lack stimulates the heart. She plopped down on the couch beside me. Oh, horrible night. I'll say. 5 dead. I thought you'd have better justification. A shame. I heard the unfur of the couch whisper as she leaned over. She moved a hair out of my eye. Pyrrhus, huh? Well, then I'll be Antiope. How many injured? Plenty, Antiope said. And they're getting treated now. When do you want yours? Tomorrow. It's horrid. I tapped my dead right eye. Worse than the films show it. Want a hand getting to your apartment? I shrugged. She took my arm a final time and we rose and we walked. After this, I'm retiring for sure. It's ugly work. I'm going to find a way to work at a house, one way or another. Die within a year. Well, maybe I could stretch out the pleasure. I have some alternative ideas I might enjoy enough to want to keep living. Careful, that's the kind of logic that takes you to the hospices. We paused. I reached forward and found my doorknob. When I pushed, it opened easily. Inside, Nico meowed. Perhaps I could take her job interviewing hospice residents. Antiope said, I'm a big fan of the hospices. Almost everybody's there, I said. I hadn't realized. We're just a tiny bit of humanity that isn't happy being happy all the time. Well, that's just it, isn't it? We're out here because we don't want it to be so easy, she sighed. She took us to my bed, passing my couch. Her body leaned against mine. Sometimes I wonder if we need these monsters to complete the drama we want. Okay, you're tired. You want to rest now. Your long mission over. Well done. Bye-bye. You can stay if you want. She twisted against me. I know your tastes from work. I know I couldn't satisfy them while you're blind. I'm curious to hear your other ideas for a house. Would you enjoy describing them to me? I'd enjoy listening. She began to describe a machine that would extract all fluids from her. She spoke quickly. The voice of the investigator was gone. Even the accent from her disguise the other night had returned. She haughtily described a performance where the audience would be permitted to strike her to death, and a factory of her cloned minds would provide weekly replacements. The incredible prices we'd charge would more than pay for the whole thing. At some point, I drifted off. I awoke briefly in the middle of a description of a hypothetical machine that would allow her to switch souls with an audience member, and thus allow her to truly treat her body as an object. But she noticed I stirred, whereas she must have not have noticed I'd fallen asleep, and said she would go now. She kissed me. She bit my lip and sucked at it. Then she was gone. I heard Nico lock the door, and I fell asleep for a very long time. A year later, things were different. Antiope and I ran our 20-minute house in a building that contained many 20-minute houses. Through ingenious use of mirrors, she had achieved something that approximated her idea of switching souls with an audience member. Though we were out of the service, old friends provided us updates, knowing we'd enjoy them. They backtraced the Thermidor through coffin golems it had begun to hack. It was destroyed in a nuclear blast. The titanium core of its mind was executed by the golem it had hacked to attack me. The golem itself informed me of this, indicating that it now felt it had begun to work away its debt to me, though I blamed it not at all. I had inquired with the scientists as to whether golems possessed real consciousness. They excitedly explained that at the time of the city's founding, they were all highly uncertain. Since then, they'd made great practice. They had split evenly into groups, certain that golems possessed it and certain that golems didn't. I decided to check again in another 30 years. One day at one of Antiope's performances, I saw Mathone in the audience, a metal bracelet wrapped around one of her raised ankles. She was too distracted to see me then, and I could have arranged it that she would not see me. Instead, I took my usual position at the door and bade the audience good nights. When she saw me, she pulled me aside. It was the first time I had seen her as a regular woman, not as an eye, not as waves of yellow, not as a bacchant. She looked plain, unadorned, and happy. "Are you well, then? I see your eyes are fixed." They fixed me fast. I was fine before the sun was up. This was a lie. I had them replace the destroyed right eye. The yellow left eye I have never altered since. I squinted at her. "How about you?" "Oh, it's been a very long time for me. Time moves differently in prison. I'd quite forgotten what you looked like." "Are you on probation?" "That's exactly it. I took time to think about everything. I had a lot of time. Saw how I reasoned poorly. Decided to start fresh out here. I understand why they'd want to watch me. I appreciate it." I grimaced. "Quite a change from when I last saw you." She looked me up and down. "I had a list of apologies to you, but I feel like they would only annoy you now. Did you hear the news about my surrogate?" "I just stick to my house." "She's giving her brain to the castle to be converted into a new machine they've devised. It converts energy into pleasure hyper-efficiently." She smiled blankly. "They're building probes to spread these machines across the universe. All the lifeless rocks around the roaring suns. They'll be converted into these machines and they'll burst into pleasure whenever they drink of the sun's light. But we don't know if it'll actually experience anything." "Well, that's what I told her exactly. She said something from the sporting districts. No harm, no foul." Mathone shrugged. I shrugged back. "I should bid farewell to our guests." "Of course, but if you ever want to, do what we never did. I'm in District Amathia. See you." And she walked off, her ankle bracelet garishly visible under her chroma skirt. Only a few weeks later, after Antiope had begun her final decay, I went looking for Mathone in District Amathia. Through rainbow streets, marble buildings, wet tunnels. I cannot find her, nor can I stop. It seems increasingly likely that she's retired to the forest in the north. But I have no wish to leave the city. So I continue my search here and write to you this account of the only events of note in my life. When I hunt above ground, I can squint at where the stars must be hiding behind the glow of the city. I can imagine that the mines being built to orbit them will experience true joy as their stars shine on them. When I hunt underground, I cannot imagine it. What are your thoughts on the story? You can always send me an email. I'm kate@clarkesworldmagazine.com. We have a few more left for the month, for the year. I do hope you'll come back and listen, should you so choose. And until then, my dear listener, I bid you a very fond and warm, and hopefully very temporary, farewell.